This is Morning Perfect Base. I am Van Velding. I am going to work on my perfect base a little bit each week, and after a couple of months, we are going to see just how far we've gotten. I am still working on the external walls of the perfect base. I am going to render them in dirt, and then I am going to do finishing later. I'm just going to establish their shape for starters. God damn, it's night. Alright, we're gonna go to sleep. We're gonna go to sleep and come back whenever it's daytime. My base is 80% safe for darkness. There's a minimum of creepers that spawn inside of my core areas. You can also see I've done a little bit of work off camera. You see I got some new flags back there. I think specifically in the last episode I put up a white flag with a black border. I have since experimented with mini flags before. I'm going to put up the wall. I might begin working on this, the west wing. As you can see, it's the only wing that still has... let me get around here. As you can see, it's the only wing that still has like buildings and trees and bullshit like that on it. So I'm going to build these walls. And then, time permitting, I will go down there and I will flatten all that shit out. So I am going into... I did not think this topic would last this long. I am going into the project I like to call Enteprise 3, which is Star Trek, but everyone is alive and on the same ship. The Jim Kirk's Enterprise. Jim Kirk is the captain. Got 37 characters. Captain Kirk, 6 divisions of 6 main characters. Plus we got some supporting characters that I am gonna get into. Okay, so last time I talked about I finished up the vertical integration of these characters. Now they're all in 6 different divisions: operations, mission specialists, medical, science, navigation, / engineering, and security. And then I started getting into how they are horizontally associated by their rank. I went with Bashir, Wesley, and Odo. The mid-level officers, I don't know if they're going to be 2 to a bunk, 3 to a bunk. Probably 3 to a bunk, honestly. Or I might mix it up. Maybe there's 3 and then 2 and then 1. I don't know. What I currently have is 3 to a berthing, which is Harry Kim, the older Harry Kim, Jadzia Dax, a little older Jadzia Dax, didn't die, not married to Worf. And Tuvok. Those 3 have a shared quarters, and I think that's fascinating. Try to imagine one of these Star Trek The Next Generation quarters with the windows in the back and the big central area and the 2 little rooms at one side, and you modify it so it can accommodate, 1 more sleeping pod and maybe 1 or 2 more bathroom pods. And that's where these people hang out. This is their common space shared by Harry Kim, Jadzia Dax, Tuvok. The other one is Deanna Troi. Okay, Catherine Pulaski, slightly junior to how we see her in season 2 of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And goddamn Spock, I couldn't imagine those 3 rooming together and not trying to literally murder each other. Like, seriously, one of them gets off shift, the door opens in front of them, and you immediately hear the Vulcan music. I could not imagine those 3 people living together, sharing a room or sharing a bathroom or a common living space. Or trying to have fuck buddies over. I just could not imagine it. I'm really proud of that. I like that emergent property of these characters being together as a bunch of mid-level officers. I just think it's great. I just think it's great. So finally we have senior officers, and those guys are 2 to a room. Captain gets his own room, obviously. I know it's kind of against what we've established in Star Trek. In Star Trek, kind of all the senior officers have their own room, and it's pretty, even if it's a small room, it's their own room. Alter the size of that to match. Imagine something twice the size of one of the staterooms. Is that the correct phrase? One of the staterooms from Star Trek: The Original Series, and it's just got two guys in it, and they share a room. It's a little more efficient, maybe a little more. I don't say breathing room. Right. So, okay. So, Benjamin Sisko and Catherine Janeway. I honestly don't imagine these two having any goddamn problems. I think a little bit I know about Catherine Janeway personally. Maybe she had a dog, she had a boyfriend. She likes coffee. She's pretty proud of her. She's misinformed of her heritage. Back from the late 20th century, early 21st century. I don't know much else about her, honestly, personally. She kind of likes romantic literature, kind of Jane Eyre type of shit. I think Ben Sisko would be acceptable or indifferent to that. Is that 3? Yeah, it's 3. Okay, alright, it's 3. Alright, it's fine. So we're gonna build up here and build up this wall. So I don't know if I originally is a doorway to pathway to from the forest from the fucking courtyard to the village. I think we're good. Right. And then again, he does cooking. I couldn't see Catherine Janeway not liking the cooking. I couldn't see Raktajino versus coffee being a big deal. I could not imagine two better roommates than these two incredibly responsible, fully grown adults. Which brings me to... I did intentionally pick these, okay? And I'm a little proud of this one, okay? Jean-Luc Picard and Montgomery Scott. One, lots of books. Lots of shit being taken out to make bookshelves, alright? That's who these two characters are. 50% technical manuals, 50% goddamn philosophy books. Just a great synergy there. On no other point. Do these two people have any kind of commonality? Scotty is an outgoing, gregarious, right-brained type of guy. Jean-Luc Picard's obviously very logically minded, very cerebral. He likes his mysteries. But he's very buttoned down. He's slightly impersonal. He's not comfortable in social situations. We see this multiple times where he's put into a social situation. He is stymied. I think he's great at diplomacy. I think he's great at that very structured diplomacy. I wouldn't advocate for like an autistic Jean-Luc Picard. My understanding is that there are a lot of people who champion an autistic Julian Bashir. I think that's fine. That's not my specialty. I think it's a great addition to a character. But I just do not see... I can see a little bit of an odd couple bit. And my first impulse is to say, Oscar and Felix were friends for years, and you see the most famous fight between Oscar and Felix, and it's the two of them telling each other how they feel, about how they care so much for each other, and how it makes them angry that they can't get along. It is one of, I think, the best conflicts in movie history, watching Oscar and Felix. If you have not seen The Odd Couple, it's exceptional. Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. It's amazing work. I believe that film won an Oscar, and it won it for a goddamn reason. So I could definitely see, hey, why not make Montgomery Scott and Jean-Luc Picard old friends, or give them some sort of, like, maybe they were roommates at the academy, and then they each had different services, and they went to different ships, and now they're both in the Enterprise, and like, we're going to room together, we're going to be senior staff, and then these professional, experienced officers live together, and they cannot fucking do it. They've changed as people, they've become less acclimated to each other, they've grown in some ways, they've become comfortable in other ways, and they just fucking can't do it. We see very few situations where Picard is so incensed or off balance, where he loses that sense of preternatural calm that he has as captain. And I think when you make him not captain, you can take that away from him again. And to make Picard and Scotty these two friends with a lot of tension that have a lot of fights. Maybe even in a relationship which isn't entirely healthy. I think that's just a great time bomb that happens in the background of whatever stories you want to tell in this setting. So I think we're going to keep the outside wall of the village low. That's why I'm doing this. I meant to explain that earlier. And then we're just going to build up the walls here. Fuck that up. All right, I'm supposed to put the brick down right before I land. I am 50-50 on that. Okay. I'm not really sure if I need to build this wall all the way up. Anyway, so Picard and Scotty, Cisco and Janeway, and then Crusher and Kira. And I think a lot of what we saw with Dax and Kira in terms of Dax being, oh, you can be girly, it's okay, and Kira being, I'm not used to being girly, it's not really my thing. That was some pretty good stuff. I think those were some of the best character moments with Dax, and it was some of the better character moments with Kira. I don't think that a woman's character arc needs to be about her discovering that it's okay to be feminine, but that is Kira's character arc, and that's a fine character arc. I think Crusher can support that. I think both of them can have a more nuanced take on that. Crusher is a character who's honestly, Beverly Crusher is not a character who's written with a lot of flaws. Because she's not developed. Crusher is a very strong character because she is not developed. So those two, I could definitely see those two having a really complicated dynamic, being one of the more deep relationships of the show, perhaps even becoming romantic, possibly sexual briefly, perhaps not working in the end, becoming complicated. I think there's a lot you can do with that. That's not just their relationship. We just don't know a lot about these two characters personally. We don't know how Beverly Crusher keeps her quarters. We don't know if she hangs socks up to dry. We don't know if Kira leaves books all over the place. We know very little about them personally. We know Kira's religious, which isn't the deepest characterization. Crusher has a son. Again, there's no real depth there for those characters. We could make some space for them. We could learn new things about them. Things in which they contrast, things in which they have an accord. We could make Crusher. We know that Crusher has some reluctance. Some of the characterization we get from Crusher is willing to have sex with the Candle Ghost, not willing to have sex with the spirit of a man that she loves when that man is in a woman's body. It's not great characterization, but it's something. It's something. A complicated relationship with Jean-Luc Picard, which maybe Kira can help with. I don't know. She has her own historical attachments with men because Hollywood is that way. Anyway, and then finally, of course, Jim Kirk has his own quarters. So finally, I wanted 3 axes for characters to get together. Now, obviously, some characters have their connections. Beverly Crusher has medical division connections. She has senior officer connections. And she has a connection with Wesley Crusher and Jean-Luc Picard because of just how their characters are made. But what if we have a generic third level of connection that keeps these characters together, keeps certain characters together? But BT dubs, these trees are too close to the wall. I'm going to cut them down. I don't like it. Fuck it. So I have made actual work shifts. 6 work shifts, which I don't even fucking care how they work together. I'm just going to throw them goddamn shit together. So, okay, so Alpha Shift. Alpha Shift consists of Jim Kirk's off duty or whatever, right? You get your main shifts and people do those shifts. And then you're like, okay, well, here's a watch shift. So, this isn't necessarily, it's hard to explain. On a naval ship, you work, right? You work on a rotation. And then, as I understand it, there's an actual watch that you stand. So we're talking about shifts versus watch stations. I'm sorry, shifts versus watches. So we're going to make up 6 watches. that just fit how fucking ever, man. I don't even give a shit. If we need to gather a bunch of different officers and characters for some reason, we're just going to pull a shift and see what comes out. So, Alpha Shift. Alpha Shift is Ben Sisko. Ben Sisko will be in command of the Alpha Shift. The next senior officer will be Harry Kim, who is his direct junior, which isn't mixing things up, but it's very hard to mix these things up in a very specific way to preserve certain relationships. Jadzia Dax. Jadzia Dax has to be linked with Sisko. This is part of their history. So she is going to be another officer that's on the Alpha Shift. Our enlisted are going to be Worf, Riker, and Paris. Again, Worf and Riker are bros going way back. Paris is linked with Kim. Kim and Paris are bros, so it's a way to team up a bunch of duos for them to work together for some reason. They're like, hey, look, can you guys do stuff? These people are having a problem with their navigational array, and one of them's hurt. Therefore, the guys that we're going to send over, they're going to be Riker and Paris. You guys chill out, enjoy each other. That was the bad connection, but you know what I mean. Navigation problem, security problem, Riker and Worf go over. Operations and medical, therefore we're going to have Kim and Paris go over. Or some other combination. Why wouldn't Tom Paris hang out with Jadzia Dax? Why couldn't those two spend time together and get to know each other? All of these guys are going to get off their watch at the same time. It's going to be 4 a.m. They're all going to go to the galley. They're going to get some coffees and some Roctaginos, and they're going to hang around there and fucking talk with Sisko and Kim and Worf and Dax and Riker and Paris. So moving on, Beta Shift. Beta Shift is going to be Jean-Luc Picard, Uhura, Rand, Leonard McCoy, Yar, and Ro. Again, I kind of wanted... Picard has mentees as well. His mentees are his position as a commanding officer, but I think that's still relevant for Yar and Ro to be in there. Uhura, Rand, and McCoy don't have a specific relationship. They're just, kind of in there. I think that's great. Let's see. The Ru. Okay, Ru Shift is not a Greek letter. That is the Bajor number 1. That is not canonical. That is not even beta canon. Just made that up. That is obviously going to be Lieutenant Commander Kira's shift. That is going to include Geordi, Wesley, Pulaski, the EMH, and Data. I don't know how the EMH got in there. Obviously, you want Geordi, Wesley, and Data to be chilling out, hanging out, being bros. Kira's already connected to Odo. That's her big connection because they're both in security. So that's just kind of the clerical error. Interesting combinations are Pulaski and Kira. The EMH and Data. I think there's a lot of synergy for those who talk about shit. Next one is the Delta Shift. That is going to be Janeway, right? Janeway, Chekhov, Ezri Dax, and Chakotay. Like half those guys are for mission specs. It's not like super helpful. Sulu and Tuvok. So again, it's very mission spec heavy, very Voyager heavy. But still you get Chekhov and Sulu in there who are bros. Sulu and Janeway, which we have kind of already had, but also Sulu and Tuvok who have a history, which we're not, I don't want to say honoring because it's not that big of a deal. We're acknowledging they have a history because the guy who played Tuvok was a background character on the Excelsior when Sulu was in command of Star Trek 6. So anyway, all those guys are in there together. I'm kind of looking at the clock here. I know I'm running out of time. Epsilon Shift, that's going to be Scotty. That's going to be Troy, Bashir, O'Brien, Savick, and Torres. And if that isn't just begging for trouble, I don't know what is. Scotty and Troy. I mean, he's an alcoholic from the 60s who's obviously not in touch with his feelings. And in fact, what that murdered a lady from before feelings with the help of Jack the Ripper. Troy, who's very empathic. Bashir, who is just a huge emotional freaking mess. Savick, who is a mess. Torres, who is a mess. It's the mess shift. O'Brien, who kind of has his shit together, except whenever he's in one of those Torture O'Brien episodes. Again, I mean, one, we are obviously gonna put fucking Scotty and O'Brien together. Like, there's no way you put all Star Trek characters in one goddamn ship and you don't find some way to make Scotty's path intersect with O'Brien's path. That's happening. That's gonna happen, bar none. I like it. I like it. It's a very dysfunctional ship. It's one of my favorites. So I gotta fill that thing in. Okay, all right. I super running out of time. Finally, Zeta Shift. Zeta Shift is Beverly Crusher, Odo, Chapel, Kess, Nog, and Spock. Spock with anyone's great because Spock is just one of the best characters in Star Trek. Odo and Spock, I think that there's some synergy there. Nog and Spock, I think, is fascinating. Crusher and Nog is great. Kess is so underdeveloped. Just to see her deal with that big spread of characters in terms of Nog and Spock and Odo and Crusher and Christine Chapel. Again, very, very, very medical heavy shift. But a good one. I like the potential that those characters can have there. Odo's very cynical. All right. Let me just finish up here. I'm going to try to get like some of these things, and then I'm going to have to log off and just come back and get them later, or perhaps even get them off camera. Regardless, I like that. That is one of the first real, what if we just throw random characters together a bit? And I'm happy with how it turned out. I think it's intriguing with the way different characters plug into each other. I'm very happy with it. Now, some of those shifts lack specialists in certain fields. I want to fix that, and I'm going to use characters from Star Trek Enterprise to fill that in, kind of as supporting characters, background characters. It always feels fanish when every character is connected to canon. We're like, oh, why don't you take over, Mr. Tucker? And then like you keep going on. And it feels like a complete fanish thing to do where everybody's someone important. But if you take Kirk's Enterprise and you take in everyone from major Star Trek stuff in it, that's what you get. So we'll talk about that next time until I get a good sign off, guys, okay?